Welcome everyone to Mini Chat. So today's conversation, we're going to discuss our statutes, a reminder of our inferiority or an honor to historical giants. I'm sure everyone's seen what's going on in the news and how statutes has now become a big issue in a few communities where they're pulling down statues. So I just want to get everyone's opinion on this. So the first question I probably ask everyone on here is, what does a statue really represent for them?
I think for me personally, a statue is more a representation of how Britain is able to kind of rewrite history and only tell one side of history. And it just represents, how white supremacy or white power is still in play today. The short answer, I guess.
For me, it's just a statue, pretty much, a memorial into somebody esteemed. That's just it. So it's in itself, statues are not, for me, they're not history, but it's just a reminder, okay, this person has done well, let's immortalize him in this regard. That is statues for me. So it's just to immortalize people or certain personality or certain people in this world, as a, sometimes reverential, sometimes just as a reminder of who that person is. Don't forget that person. So that's all status is for me. It's not necessarily history because, yeah.
Would you see it as a celebration?
No. How do you mean celebration of the person's life? The
person's life, because you're putting a monument up to represent that person, so people must know about them. So what is it there for specifically?
I think it's just to bring that person into the conscious world. Let me put it that way, because statues to me, it's akin to an epitaph in the cemetery, pretty much. So instead of being in the cemetery, they immortalize that in the center, Trafalgar Square, for example, so that everybody can see. So it's no more to me than a glorified cemetery.
For me, I was just going to say, I agree with Minnie. I think it's a celebration of somebody's life. It doesn't matter if it was something good or bad. It's just a reminder of what they've done for society. They might not give you the full facts of whatever they've done, but I just think it's a celebration of the person's life, basically.
Right, you were going to say something? Thank you for that, Kat.
Yeah, I think you put up a statue to honor people. You don't put it up for someone that you think is any and anybody. As Katina said, no, you might not tell us the good and bad of it all, but you put them up for meaning. If I go to another city and I do one of the tours, they mention the statues there. They talk about what those people have done for that country and for that city. And the same would happen here. Like, I've not gone on a London tour, but the same would happen, no doubt, for Winston Churchill, and them talking about what it is that person has done for the UK. I don't think, I just think it's for honor, because there are other ways that you can do that. It's if you want people coming to your country and the people that are routinely walking past that statue to keep that person in mind and in memory. So in terms of keeping people inferior, if that person did some pretty horrible stuff, then yeah, it can act as something that keeps people in that mindset. If they have to, say, see that person on their commute every day, like someone said to me about the Edward Colston thing, every day, knowing that person did what they did. So you've got this, they're heightened for a reason. They're made of certain metals for a reason. It's honorable. If someone said they were going to make a statue of me when I'm like, before I die or once I'm dead, I would think, well, I've done something pretty memorable and pretty impressive to have gained that. So that's what.
Right, thank you for mentioning the Edward Colston. So in terms of that, recently, is everyone aware who Edward Colston is?
Well, I've only, obviously, like many, some people, you see statues all over the place and we don't really stop and look. We don't know who they are. We don't know what they represent. And not unless something happened on a grand scale. Like, I wouldn't have known who he was. A lot of people didn't know who he was, and there's a lot more statues. I didn't know much about Churchill, but it's just it just brings it to the forefront what these statues are now. And I think people going forward, they're all going to be looking. If they see a statue there, they might just Google it to see who was this person, how much information can I get from this person whilst I'm here in this square or this city, before I take a picture of it or stand next to it, because that's the thing we do. We stand next to a nice looking statue, don't know what it represents, and later on to find out that this man stood for a lot of bad things. And so personally for me, I used to know about statues. I also knew about grand estates or grand properties in Wales, for example. And then in my relationship, my ex used to want to go to these places, and I used to think, we don't know how these places came by. These grand estates, thousands of yards and acres. I'm thinking, I bet any money it has to do with slavery, but I didn't have the facts. And I think so. I was like that with statues, not really keen on taking pictures of them unless know a little bit about them. So Edward Colston, for one, that everybody read, and people don't even know how much money is given, but they know how many people they've killed. So straight away, the bad outweigh the good. And so it should be, because no matter what, he's like a serial killer, killing other people, but nice to his mom, it doesn't count. So that's my stand on that,
But I think that point also goes back to the whole idea of, when we see a statue, we only see one side of it. We don't see the history behind that statue. So it's, again, Britain's ability to only tell like one side or one narrative. Yes. And for us, we don't live in Bristol, so we might not understand, the people in Bristol's frustration. People in Bristol might have very well walked past that statue and have seen, and had some kind of reaction towards it. And, they had been petitioned before trying to get the statue removed, because Colston's is all over the streets in Bristol. He's all over, there's actually a school or an area in Bristol called Colston. And so people were trying to do this for such a long time, but it come to so far down the line for them to actually having to physically remove the statue themselves.
Do you guys think that the way that they pulled down the statue was the right thing to do? Or because Yolandi mentioned something very, very important, that a lot of the time we stand next to statues, we take pictures, we smile, and that could have been that the same person who was like one of our slave masters, and we're smiling next to it, not knowing the history. So what are your views on that? Do you think that people had the right to be like, we're pulling this down? Because I believe it was Dr. Shola who said a statue should not be better than one Black person's life. So what are you guys' views on that?
Lawless, I don't tolerate lawlessness at all. However, should the statue be up based on the history of the man that is being honored or glorified? I don't think so. But as I say, there's two wrong can't make a right, and I don't think the statue should have come down the way it did. However, I think it shouldn't be there in the first place and should have been removed, just like the others that has been removed so far across the United Kingdom. So I think due process is needed, and sometimes people get impatient and they just can't wait. And I do understand the frustration of that being impatient. However, I think that the way it come down shouldn't have been the way it should have come down. But nevertheless, it is down. But my concern with these statues and symbols is that, the hypocrisy across our community is very rigid and deep, because when specific groups become extreme in their behavior, we lash out and we talk about them. But when our community become extreme in our behavior, we tend to facilitate that behavior in a sense. Like, for instance, the Muslims come and they bring their practices here, and a lot of times we said, oh, they're too extreme with their practice and they can't be telling us that we should facilitate them a lot, not understanding that it's the same vice versa. We some of us might not willingly come to Britain, But we need to understand that, we need to understand the country that we live in and what these symbols mean to them. Even if we disagree with the fact that they are there, you get what I mean? So it's just one of those, I just don't agree with how it was pulled down, but I think, you know, the history behind it is very significant to us as it is significant to the whites. And for us, we are more insulted by the way how these men and women go about and do things back in their time.
Keith, I have a question for you before anyone interject. You mentioned that we must more or less respect what these symbols mean to them. Who are the them are you referring to? Because I believe the way it comes across to me, and this is just for me to understand what you mean by that them, does the them include the black citizens, or is it only including the white citizens?
Obviously, the people who put it there, we live in a country that the majority of the population is white, so the governance and the legislation that are passed are mostly passed by people that are white. So obviously, these statues or symbols went up by a specific approvals from people in high places. So you know those are people I'm referring to. You know what I mean? And those symbols might have a meaning to them and the larger population. For the minority, it has the only symbol it has for us is the fact that we were, you know, abused, exploited, and you know treated like animals among these people. I'm not saying that they shouldn't come down. No, we shouldn't speak out against getting them removed. However, we need to understand that the moment we start to facilitate lawlessness and making things become the norm, then we tread in very thin lines. You know what I mean? That's all I'm saying.
I don't see any lawlessness in pulling down the coasting statue if we're staying on coasting.
Yeah,
I don't see that. Coasting statue is a form of oppression. It's a reminder of the oppression that has gone in the past. It's a reminder of the superiority that has been perpetrated right from the word go. It's a form of, it's a reminder of who we are enslaved, the past, the history. So keeping that history alive, that's at least for him, let me just talk about the coasting there. That is the statue. So I'm quite happy that he came down. I mean, over the years or over the decade, there's been back and forth negotiation to take it down, to put it somewhere else, to do something else about it, or to include his participation in the slavery, or let me put it in the modern day language, trafficking, human trafficking. So it should not be there. It cannot be there because anytime you walk past it, you're reminded of who you were. This was the guy that was part of the community, or part of the guys that actually enslaved your grandparents or your ancestral stuff. So no, I think it should be there. I think it shouldn't be there. I think it was pulled down. I think it should be pulled down. Because there are different fractions. Yes, we need to understand them. Some people say, oh, we need to understand that this is part of our heritage. So if it's part of the heritage, you have to accept the fact that your heritage, it's the one form based on slavery. And that has been abolished in the past, but it's still keeping the history alive, that heritage alive, to say, oh, okay, this is the inferiority of you guys. That is what he stood for. That is what that statue stood for. And I'm glad it came down at the end of the day, because if it didn't come down 2 weeks ago, whenever it came down, it might never have come down. Maybe in the next 10 years, it will still be there, and it will just be argument back and forth and back and forth. So I'm glad it came down. It's a form of oppression for that one.
No, I was gonna say, as well as being happy it came down, I'm happy it came down in the way that it came down.
Thank you.
And I don't think that's us like applauding whatever. What he did and how he came down and how they disposed of him was very significant. Like with how slavery was, these people were shipped over, which would have been on a boat for 3 months in things that were smaller than coffins, and when they died, which of course they would, they're thrown overboard. It made sense to me in a poetic justice type of sense that he was thrown over into the water like 19,000 people that died on his ships did. So for me, the way he did it was the way they did it was perfect. It was the fact that it was also allies, the fact that it wasn't even just Black people there. It was the fact that multiple people came together, Bristolians that had seen this, that had also understood our it's not even ours, it's all of ours, because yes, some of them are their ancestors would have been involved in that, much to their despair. And it's the fact that their grandchildren and great-grandchildren and us could come together and say, that's wrong, that shouldn't be there. They asked, they petitioned, they did all the things that they said that they could. If we keep waiting for due process, if we wait for due process in Britain for them to give us anything, we will be here for decades to come. And that was a statue. That was a statue, and it took so long to come down. What do we have for like education and things like that? Those things will take so much, and I don't think peaceful is always going to get everything done. And pulling down a statue, that it wasn't a life. It was literally it didn't hurt anybody, but it made a lot of people happy. So that's
for me personally, it came down. I'm happy it came down. A lot of people might be upset the way it came down. But if you've been waiting for so long, petitioning for so long, nobody hearing you, it's like they're brushing you off. So people getting upset, so they took matters in their own hands. But the thing is, what I don't understand is that they took a metal figure, and threw it in the sea, and people behaved like these people killed so many people. Do you understand? The actual protesters that threw this figure into the sea, they behave like these protesters killed people. Do you understand what I mean? And they want to put them in jail. But they don't understand the history behind it of what this person has done. That's why they behave that way that they did. But I'm saying why they want to slaughter the people that threw this statue in the water, and they didn't kill nobody.
And celebrate the ones.
Yeah. It doesn't make no sense. Why are you going to celebrate somebody that killed 19,000 people and have his statue up there? There's basically my ancestors, and if I have to walk through Bristol, seeing that and reminded of that, I'll be frustrated. I'll be like, you don't care about you don't value my life either. You don't value my life. You don't care about what I think.
My only concern, though, I think that question is directed to everyone. Keith used a term on lawlessness. My concern is when it comes to, and this is open to everyone in the discussion, why is it when the Black person does something, it's lawlessness behavior, and everyone's free to contribute based on what they view it. However, when a different race, possibly the white race, is classed as passionate and driven, and I can.
No.
So can I get a view on that? Because I do need to understand it, and obviously hearing us also describing it just like how the media would, I do get some insight on that.
So that was when Keith mentioned that the term lawlessness, I completely disagreed with it. I think it follows a lot of the narrative about, like, you know, the whole violence and aggressive and that kind of behavior that is, you know, typical and expected of Black individuals. And I think the issue is, like, we have to tolerate some level of lawlessness. History has taught us that, because if it wasn't for lawlessness, if it wasn't for, you know, our lawlessness, we would never be free in the first place. We would still be slaves. It was because of rebellion, which at that time was deemed lawlessness, is why we got our freedom today. So I think that we do definitely need to be careful of our words. I think the word protest is a fair representation of what that is. It wasn't necessarily, I don't think it was a violent protest. I don't think it was a peaceful protest. I just think it was a form of protest, because in the removal of the statue, that many people have said, no one was harmed in it. And I feel like that's something that just needs to be said. Like the term lawlessness is just, I think, inappropriate.
Maybe the term unlawfulness, or the correct wording that Keith used, I agree with Vladimir, where he says it's something that is always associated more with Black people, but the people represented with these statues or memorials, they were more unlawful. They did immoral things by going and taking people against their will, making them slaves, dropping them off in the ocean. That's more unlawful than anything any one of us can do, even pulling down a statue, throwing it in a canal. We can never be as unlawful as those people they're celebrating. So with those statues going down, personally, I am not happy how it was done, but at the same time, I don't think there was ever going to be a better way of it being done. We can do petition after petition, but if the people who are voting say, oh, it's okay to have it there, then we still lost. So how it was done, I'm not happy with it, but I'm glad it happened.
Every country have its law.
Yeah.
And it has things that you, if you step out of line, then there's a procedure to it. That what happened in Brixton was vandalism, right? We need to, and this is the hypocrisy about the community that I often talk about. We don't call out things when it needs to be called out. You know what I mean? We justify it. As the young lady said earlier, she's not happy, and that's what I said earlier. I'm not happy with the way it come down. However, the fact is, if the police could have charged people directly for that incident, they would have charged people, because it's you're vandalizing the public property. So that's what. So there's a law that talks about that governs that in our country. We need to understand that when, as much as we want to stick into, we remember our past and how painful it is. We need to also understand that how we go about doing things. You're right, you know what I mean? Should be the last resort, and you know what I mean. But
I don't think
if we're gonna justify vandalism and say that it's okay for us to do it,
I don't think anyone here thinks that
it's wrong.
No, I don't think that anyone here thinks that like it wasn't an act of vandalism. I don't think that anyone here is saying that what they did is, well, it was in some way just or right. I think that the main thing is that the actual word lawlessness just described us as uncivilized and unruly beings, and I think.
But it was uncivilized. Come on, it was.
So can I ask Keith? Now that you've said it was unlawless or it was they vandalized the statutes, how do you think that the change would have? Can you give us a suggestion in terms of how you feel if they approach it differently? What's that different approach would have been?
Okay, with the statute,
petitions, and they did all the good. So from your perspective, what do you think?
Okay, from my perspective, my opinion on this whole statute thing, for me, the statutes mean nothing for me, right? Reason being, changes. I think that the real changes need to come from the legislations. Our education system is in a chaos. Our laws regarding reform, police reform, and inequality among these are the places that I think as a community we need to start putting our foot down. And how we do that is by getting, each of us have MPs in our area. All of us are MP in our area. And the thing with our communities, when it comes on to politics, we withdraw ourselves from it. Majority of us withdraw ourselves from it. Oh, I'm not into politics, it's just too much, they're corrupted people. There are people that were selected, they work on our behalf. We need to put things forward and petition them to talk about these things. And I'll give an example. David Lammy, the MP for Tottenham, right? He did a reform, a reform that David Cameron asked him to do in regard to the equality and the justice system. He did that reform. What happened after that? It has yet to be discussed in the House of Commons for any form of law for laws to be amended to facilitate the changes that were suggested from it. Why is that so? Because we have 65 MPs that are not being pressured by their constituency to make sure that is discussed in the House of Commons and the law has been changed. So what my thing is this: yes, the statutes are coming down, but the real change, that's not the real change. The real change comes from legislation being put in place to facilitate the revolution of Britain over the past 10 decades.
Rai, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. Whilst I agree on all of the things related to politics being where a lot of the changes will be made, I think that we can mistake that is the only way. And what I mean by when something's going to happen, like when these things are kind of coming to the surface, yes, that's going to be the things that make the difference in our lives. However, there's a lot of people who didn't know about these people and about these statues and what they've done. There's a lot of people that did not know. And there's this significance of things like that happening that be the start of people realizing what's going on, be how people get into the movement. It's significant things like that will, because them pulling it down now is a part of history. That is not going to be forgotten, the way he came down, how he came down. But a movement will not just happen just in that alone. You need things that are going to be out in the media, so you're going to have things that are happening behind the scenes, in front of the scenes. All those things are part of one movement. So I don't vilify any part of that, because I think you're going to need things that are very media prone, and very kind of in the face of everybody. Because the other statues that have come down over the UK, they would not have come down if they didn't pull Colston down. It was because they were worried they were going to get pulled down in the same manner that they went and took some of them and made that decision before. But I think, yes, you're right in terms of its MPs need to be pressured. And I'm someone that's been looking into doing stuff like that. But at the end of the day, if it wasn't for people going out, protesting, pulling those things, like all of that, I don't know that the fire, you would have felt like, okay, I can do this. This is the time to do this. And I do think you need stuff like that to ignite people. So, yeah.
If we're doing stuff, so my question probably is, how far are we willing to go to be pulling down statutes? Are we going to start doing research and pulling down as much statutes as possible? Do we think that there's consequences to this, or what is it? Well, what's the aim of this?
We don't have to repeat that. That was the start. That was, like Ryan said, that was the ignite. That's getting the ball rolling. So we don't need to go topple down another statue, because people will go to prison for that. But it will now put pressure on MPs and people, like the other gentleman suggests. Yeah, put pressure on MPs to say, well, that I find that really offensive. Do your research, do your homework, do petitions, get people on board, and get it out in the media, get social media, whatever, so we don't have to physically go there and vandalize it to get our points across. But sometimes it takes one to get the trick, get it going. It's like a domino effect. But we're not gonna go out there and do all of that. It's wrong. So, and then people get in trouble. Am I willing to? Sometimes in life you have to, actions speak louder than words, and the MPs, and they would tell us anything to shut us up. They would make all the promises. They were supposed to change the context on that plaque for years, and they've not done that, because you find more people in favor of leaving it there. It's like it symbolizes oppression. Let's just keep them in place. Let them remind them of who we are and how we think. You don't even know why people do some things, why people are opposed to it coming down. Why is it so important to the ones that's voting against it for it to stay there? What's so important about it? If it's that important, stick it in a museum, and then you go and see it if you want to. But people should have the choice to go and read it or see it, or if they have that choice, but to just have it blatantly in the square so that people walk past and be reminded. Because to some people, it means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. Slavery is almost normal to them, not unless they know someone or been affected by it. So yeah, going forward, no, that's not the way to go topple over. But I relish in that one when it came down, and when everybody rushed in and trampled on it. It gave a power. It signifies. It's only a metal piece of thing, but it gave us some kind of power. Tiny bit of victory. Tiny bit of victory.
Yeah. Katrina, you wanted to say something? Or Banji, I heard somebody.
Keith and Ryan both made very good points. I do think that we do need to redirect our energy in terms of investing more, especially in education, because I feel like statues is only a representation of the superiority or the systematic inequality. I feel like we need to put more of our effort into actually dealing with this system and dealing with the effect that it is having on our society. And I feel like one way that we can do that is by, instead of using this money to, I don't know, bring down more statues or whatever, we can use it to educate people about the history of British imperial past and colonialism. I feel like British history is too ingrained in imperialism and colonization to ever be kind of taken down in terms of statues or monuments. There are tons of buildings across the UK that are made from the capital of slavery and all those things. So I feel like it will be a kind of a waste of energy. I think going forward, we do need to like redirect our energy in education specifically and dealing with the other inequality issues, as Keith has mentioned.
I agree with Vladimir, and
As you just mentioned that. The thing is, economics is the way forward. Our community in the world, we're the biggest consumers in the world. Every multi-billionaire businesses have benefit from the Black community tremendously because we are consumers. Yet still, we talk about, I don't think it's the responsibility of a school to teach a child about their history. I don't think it's the responsibility of the school. That's first. The school play a part, but it's not their responsibility. The responsibility of teaching your children about their history boils down to parenting. Parents need to spend time and teach their children too. Our community need to start building schools, right? Schools that our people come to, and we put, yes, our curriculum will be governed by the government and by whatever, but we can reinforce the curriculum that we want. The Jewish people have a curriculum that is, if you look at it, you will wonder if this is a religious school or not, because their curriculum is so embedded with their beliefs and system. You get what I'm saying? So until we start building schools, building our own hospitals, having our own supermarkets, then we can challenge the change. Then we can use our economic, our money.
Sorry, Keith. Don't you think that would cause segregation again? We don't want that.
Exclusion. Then that's us
also that's
excluding ourselves. The
Okay,
whole
yeah.
point for us to
Segregation will always be around.
Okay,
That would always be
let's
around.
do it from one person at a time because we do want to hear everyone. So, Katina, what was your...
Sorry.
I'm just saying it will cause segregation. It will set us back. We're trying to come together. We don't want to be put apart. We want the kids to learn exactly what happened. Not only the white side, but the Black side, even the Indian side, whatever in society. Everybody needs to learn every part of history, if that makes any sense.
I agree with Katina, because if we now have, I see Kip's point, and I used to think that as well. But then if we now have Black this, Black that, then it's always going to be Black people, white people. Unfortunately, the situation is we live in England, so we have to learn to live together. At the current moment, my son goes to a white school. What they teach him is white history, and the white history that makes Black people look inferior. So I wouldn't be, yeah, I do teach my son Black history, but he can go and be like, Black people are great. But if his teacher in front of him is telling him that Black people have always needed white people to help them, then all the effort we do at home is not enough. The government that we pay taxes to has to teach our children everything in a raw and transparent way. That's all I think should be done.
I think from Keith's perspective, Keith, help me if I'm wrong. I think what Keith is saying, and this might just be me hearing it wrong, so Keith, do correct me, is that as a Black community, because we consume so much, we're not segregating ourselves from you. However, let's build our own community. Let's start buying from the Black shops. Let's have healthcare that, you know what, when we go to hospitals, they can't look after us. If they can't, we can still bounce back in the healthcare that a Black person will help us, and we have our own funding. So basically, the way the system is built is that, say for instance, a Black person is more likely to be stop and searched than a white person. They're likely to go to jail than a white person. They're likely to get a longer prison sentence than a white person. So I think what Keith is saying is, when these things happen, if we have a Black community also, not segregating it, but we have a Black region or something that we're like, you know what, my son was maybe arrested for the wrong reason, he's innocent. We can go back. We have lawyers. We have people that can defend it. We have our own community, but yet we're still part of the wider community. Because the Jewish people, they lobby all the time. They're part of the bigger community, but they also have the inner community that they can always go back and say, you know what, we need this, we need to sort this.
Yeah, we could do that. We could do that. Sorry, go on.
I was asking Keith, is that what more or less what he was saying? Because I wanted to understand.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, you're right as when you say that. That's where I want to get at. However, you see, we have to come to the reality that our origin is not from here, yeah. and until we get to a point where the system and the way it is set up will always favor the people that are the we call it the what they call it again, the origin, oh my god, the original people who are from the oh shit,
natives.
Sorry,
majority, maybe the majority.
Yeah.
The natives.
The natives. Sorry, the natives. Sorry. Yeah, the system will always be governed by those people. This inclusive thing that we want the system to do is I don't see it happening. However, there are some fundamental things that I think should always keep lobbying for, and that is the equality across the board. Even though we know it might not happen to a point where we are happy, but at least we know that there is improvement. And there's growth over the years. But at the same time, we live in a world where money, not here the physical money, but economics speaks for itself. The Jewish people are answered to. You know why their voice is so loud? Yesterday, the smallest voice in the world. Their voice is so loud because they have the economics, they have the money behind them. Let's forget about the God thing. Look at the money. The only time the Jewish community money coming out of their community is through childcare and housekeeping. Those are the two entities that get Jewish money because they don't have it. They don't have it like that within their community because they don't believe in it. But if you talk about property, if you talk about real estate, if you talk about transportation, if you talk any major platform you think about, they have their people there. So what I'm saying that until as a people we understand that yes, we can always, these MPs and these people down there, we put them there, or until we understand that when we step up to them and we say, listen, if you don't lobby for our rights, then you know that you're getting funding from our community. We're not backing you. You get what I mean? We have leverage here. But we fail to understand that the leverage we have is not just about writing a piece of paper or putting something up, but we have the bucket. Every 5 year or 4 year, they depend on us to put them in a place of power. And until we understand how significant that is, and we vote in blocks instead of individuals, then we keep on fighting this battle. Because we're not fighting it with organization, we disorganize with the fight.
I agree with Keith on that one, in terms of the Black community being organized.
Let me just say, what you're talking about right now, if you then transport that back into Africa, say your country of origin, is that happening? The schooling, the history, the economics, is that happening in that country?
No.
No, it's not happening. And
exactly. So why are you saying that should happen in a country that you came to? If it's not happening in your country, why don't you do that? You've come here. It's all about inclusiveness. It's all about, okay, we're tackling what has happened in the past, the British past, the colonialism, the imperialism. That's what. So we come here. Okay, the system it's wrong right from the start, and that's what all these guys have been trying to fight for. Some have died for, to make everything inclusive, to make education in the libraries, put Black history in there, the true history, what has happened, not just gloss over stuff, not just gloss over some people or the atrocities that has happened in the past. That is what we're talking about here. Yes, and even if that is not in place, if that system is not in place, don't correct that system, no matter what segregationist, because that's the way I see it, or we go back to, or all the Black people go back into a shell and say, okay, we're looking after our community, then there's no point coming into England. There's no point traveling around. There is no point. You can then go back to Africa and do that. And that is where I disagree with all this.
But Banjo, we need to understand that the slavery, right, and the whole colonialism didn't just start overnight. It was our same people. It was our same people that allowed these people to come in and break our community. Hold on, let me finish, Banjo. It's our same people. So we need to understand. That's the reason why I'm saying that we need to go back to basis. Until we go back to basics in regard to understanding how this thing happened, because all we do is blame the white man. The white man this, the white man that. But the white man could not have break our security if we didn't allow them. If our foreparents, some of them didn't allow them to break that security, they wouldn't have come in. Because you look at Africa. Africa have over millions of people there, and you have a minority.
They came over to plunder. They came over to plunder.
You've got to understand the difference between the weapons that the Brits had and the weapons compared to what African nation had. You can't compare and say, okay, yes, we gave them up. It was slaughter. You can't. It wasn't a fair. You can't say, oh, we're blaming the white man for.
They had guns. They had guns. They had like powerful weapons.
It was plunder.
Their weapon was significantly higher than.
So we are saying that. Okay. So are we saying that?
It's along the line what you more or less said. I think what's happened is more or less history being taught rightly, because exactly what Keith is just said is more or less what we were taught in school that our ancestors sold us for mirrors. I'm sure some of us heard that they sold us some mirrors and baskets and all sorts. But however,
metal, iron.
However, that's not exactly the true story, because if you have, say, a piece of stick and a gun, how you're gonna run for it? So we're outnumbered. So I think that's what happened. But I do understand Keith's point. I also understand Banji's point. But it's also for us to understand that education plays a major part in terms of what we're talking about, and also money plays a major part. You can have the money and not the education, but you don't know where to put that money. Banji, you wanted to say something?
Yes, education plays a part, money plays a part, but I think there's a core issue here, which is whether you are Black, you are Indian, you are born here, or you naturalize here, you are British, you are British. And that is what we're trying, that is the inclusiveness, okay? Whether you are Black British or you are white British, it does not matter. It shouldn't have to matter. And that is the situation. That is what we are fighting for right now. That is what the protest is all about. It doesn't matter whether you are Black British, Indian British, or brown British. No, it's British is British, and everything. There has to be equality. The equality has to be there. There should be no segregation, or there should be no because the color of my skin, you can get more advancements than the other person because of the color of their skin. No. And that's why, yes, I understand where he's coming from, Pete, but do not accept that. That is not the fight right now. If that's the fight, we can go back to Africa and do that over there.
Yeah.
If you're not doing that over there, don't say you want to come and do it over here.
We've obviously moved the conversation way away from. But obviously, this tells us that there's so much passion, and there's so much that we do need to discuss, and this is beyond a statue. If you realize, we started talking about statues, and then we end up talking about people's real life situations where you wanted to say something?
Oh, it's deeper.
Yeah. I was trying to say, right, whatever Keith said, they did try it in America. I remember they had the, was it a black market?
Burnt it down. Wall Street. Tulsa.
Yeah. So they did try it. It's not like the black people didn't try, but who burnt it down?
Yeah.
Oh, they can't try it. They can't try that now anymore. They can't.
So, Katina, thank you for reminding us that.
Nation of Islam, they tried to do that and make it all about black people. but that didn't work.
But I think
America.
something like that worked at the time when there was segregation, because at that point
Yeah.
it was segregated.
Yeah.
I think in today's society, we shouldn't be trying to say things
No,
like,
that's
oh,
not.
we need division, we need to have our black schools, our black this.
No.
Being black is not a religion. It is not like being Jewish is a religion. It's tied to something. Being black, you can be British, you can be African, you can be American. It is not a single thing.
Yeah.
I get everyone's point. I do understand what Keith is trying to say, as much as it's
I mean,
segregation.
I think I understand. I understand what you're trying to say. I just don't think that's the solution at the moment.
But we never had that in Britain before. We never have a situation in Britain where
Because we're not big enough. We're amongst the minorities, so
We're
that won't happen.
outnumbered.
So hold on, do you know that you have more Jews? You have more Jews in this. There's more black people in this country than Jews, and they're still their voice is still be heard. Their voice was so loud.
Even in this country, I think a Jew has been a prime minister right in the 19th century. I can't remember his name. A Jew has been a prime minister, so they've been here a very long time. So the comparison is
no.
What
I'm saying, she said that we don't have the numbers. What I'm saying that the numbers are here. It's the organization that we need. We're not organization. We're not organized.
Yeah, but we're not trying.
Our history. Our history of what we've gone through as blacks is very similar to what the Jewish has had, but they've always had money. We have not had that because it was never given to us. It was all
given reparation money. Yeah.
It's completely different. So you can't expect black people to just spring up a school or spring up a community out of absolutely nothing. Like, I'm not saying that.
That's not what I'm saying at all.
But
you're making a comparison between blacks and Jews when we don't have the same history.
What I'm saying is that
we don't have the same history. However, we can use them as an example to build what we need to build. We don't have the money now, but we have a lot of millionaires in different places that are blacks. Or we even have people in the white community that want to support the black community. It's not about segregation. It's about how we all can come together as a black community. If we know that we're the minority and we're not being supported here, we can still fight for equality, but still organizing ourselves as a backup to make sure we're not always falling short in the line.
I'm all good for basically supporting your own, but for me, basically, I think it's gonna set us back if we're trying to do that. For me personally, I just don't see the point of basically trying to organize ourselves like an organization. We're not like that. We're not that kind of people, if that makes any sense.
I don't think Katina meant that kind of people. I think Katina just meant that we're more inclusive in society.
Yeah.
Be part of something that is bigger, not just like a small group of people.
Yeah,
we're in the Olympics with everybody in there.
I'm going to say there are Pan-African schools, and there have been. When I came over to London, I went to a Saturday Pan-African school. Like, I'm reading Akala's book. He went to a Pan-African school. We have been doing things like this, where, they have then taken it upon themselves, people out of their own time, out of their own money, to teach kids about Black history. I think there's something rooted in us almost not expecting of Britain when we don't want them to, or don't feel that we need to push as hard to include, because it's not just Black history. British colonial history will include us, will include Indians, it will include all of them. And it's not just our history. My history of slavery is also your white history of your ancestors and their part in slavery. It is not just Black history at all. It is all of our history, and they like to gloss over that bit. And having been through the school system in Britain, I wasn't taught of anything to do in Britain. I think it's not expecting of them, when you don't feel like you deserve something, because we make up 4% or how little we make up, does not mean that we don't deserve that. Like, we didn't just plop up in Britain by chance. We did not, like, this is a history of being brought here and being passed through here, and now we're here. So now we're here. What you can do for us is give us back at least the history, at least let the people know that we live amongst, that this is what has happened. But the government has always had a thing of never really telling the people on the ground what's going on. When they're bringing over the Windrush, they probably didn't explain that too. And next thing you know, all of a sudden there's more brown and black people. And where did they come from? When they brought over Indians to come and like rebuild the country after the war, there's not ever a time an explanation from the government. They know what they're doing, the people on the ground don't. So I really do think there is a lot of it rooted in history. And I don't just think from parents' homes, because like someone else said, children value what their teacher thinks. If you're coming home and they're disagreeing with what you're saying, it's going to be something else. I think it needs to start. I think the younger generation is where you can change minds, because there are people I'm talking to now in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and they're never listening. It needs to be that they know what has happened, where we are now, what needs to go forward, and in an inclusive way. Yes, support Black businesses, small Black businesses, because at the end of it, we're still not getting loans. We're still not getting certain mortgage deals, all those sort of things. So I appreciate what you want the Black community to do, but without the support of the actual economy itself, we're not getting that. If they don't start ripping apart systems and institutions as they stand now, we can't build onto something corrupt. It needs to be looked into, dug into, dismantled, exposed. And us getting a community and going over there not only does it not work to get us what we need, but two, it doesn't let them expose Britain for what they have done. They've kind of gotten away with being sheltered and hidden that. And I think that's like, it's time for that to be done.
I think having parents teach their kids history, it just opening up a whole kind of worm to biases. Because obviously as Blacks, we're going to tell the Black experience, which for us is the truth. And the white person is going to tell the white side of history if they're a white parent. So I think that's why it needs to be taught in the school, to avoid those kind of biases and kind of give a really in-depth view of what history actually is. I think it's something that parents should definitely not stay away from entirely, but encourage their children to take an interest in. But I don't think it should be the sole responsibility of the parent to teach it at all.
Okay, so I think we've heard from everyone relating to this. Obviously, we started talking about statutes, and as this discussion has really, really taught us that lives are more or less way, way more important than statutes, and we need to more or less focus on the now, which is Black lives that are living and they're breathing, and not so much focus on statutes or spend money on statutes. And yeah, so thank you for your time. I hope that everyone learned something and we understand where each person was coming from. And we would love to hear your views. And yeah, thank you for your time, and Mini Chats out.